My very first thoughts when I heard about the tragedy of Karbala was just confusion.
I didn't know much about what was going on and why all these ladies were crying and feeling extremely sad.
And I went to the shrine of Sayyidah Zainab salam alayha and saw a lot of people in black and a lot of people crying, but I had no idea why they were crying.
How can this be? How?
You're looking at 72 versus 30,000.
I accepted that Islam is my faith and that the family of the Prophet and the Prophet himself are my family.
It's not until I understood what he was bringing and what he was teaching and the beauty, and I could see that actually what he had died for and what he had lived for, that's when I got the attachment to him.
For the next 9 days, there's nothing more important. Nothing. Do.
I came back to England and I was saying to people, you must go, you've got to go to Iraq. And they said, no, Imam Hussein is in my heart, you know. So no, it's not the same, you've got to go there.
It's become like a craving for me. So when Muharram ends, I want it to come back.
It's an opportunity for you to better yourself by remembering his personality.
Mahatma Gandhi, he said himself that it taught him how to attain victory without being oppressed.
When you look at
I first came across an awareness of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam actually when during the time that I was Sunni, because I knew some Sunnis who used to have majlis for Imam Hussein, although, you know, it's a kind of minority who do that. But even though they had majlis for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, I didn't actually know the story of Karbala. I didn't know that at all. And I remember in 2002, I went to Syria with a friend. This is when I was Sunni as well. And I went to the shrine of Sayyidah Zainab salam alayha and saw a lot of people in black and a lot of people crying. But I had no idea why they were crying. I didn't know who Sayyidah Zainab was, except that she's a member of the family of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his family. And I remember remarking to my friend, when I knew nothing about the story of Karbala at that time, but I remarked to my friend how you can feel that Sayyidah Zainab salam alayha was of the family of the Holy Prophet. You could just feel something different in that haram from, you know, other places that you might visit in the city. So even though I knew nothing about Ahl Bayt, virtually nothing, I could still detect that there was something different about the atmosphere of that haram. And then came back to London and was talking to a family, and I said, I've just been to Syria and I just went to the haram of Sayyidah Zainab salam alayha. And again, they were Sunnis, and they said, who's Sayyidah Zainab? So I was quite surprised, because I thought, well, you're a born Muslim, you should know more than me, like who she is. But they didn't know who she was at all. And so I had a kind of a vague, well, I didn't know she was related to Imam Hussein at all. Didn't know that she was his sister, and I didn't know why anyone was crying. My friend didn't know why anyone was crying either. And then I remember that someone gave me the well-known book Tears and Tributes, that time, you know, I was working with followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam at the college that I was teaching, and so I became aware that around this time the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam was being remembered, but I still didn't know anything about it. So someone gave me this book and I read it. I found it informative, but I still found, for me as a kind of a beginner, I found there was a lot of detail in there to take in and different personalities to take in. But I did grasp that, I grasped the narrative of Karbala. But at that time I didn't really know people to go to majalis or anything. So it was a kind of a very slow, gradual process of becoming aware. I think by that time I had accepted that there was this incident called Karbala, and I felt sad. I felt very, very sad reading about it, but I still didn't have a full picture of the whole political background to it. And I think it's only when you start to understand the background to it, the political background, how events led up to that, that you start to, realize the brutality and the injustice, and how this is a lesson for us. This is a pattern that has continued down history. After that, I was in Iran for a few months, and that was the winter, and Muharram fell in the winter at that time. And then I became a lot more aware of it, because of course they had literally in the street they would build replicas of the battlefield of Karbala. So they would build a whole replica of what happened. And then of course they've got all the mourning ceremonies that are going on in the street and the lamentations. So that was and the lamentations were absolutely, that's what really touched me, was hearing, even though I couldn't understand most of them, that's when I got a sense of the sadness, the tragedy. And I remember even being in Tehran, and it was great, the sky was grey and it was raining on the day of Ashura, and I remember thinking, yeah, this is, the sky is crying for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So that was when, because I hadn't really gone to any majalis before that, apart from one or two where I wasn't even completely aware of what was being commemorated. So it wasn't until I saw people coming out and remembering in that sense that I began to grasp, the weight of it. And after that I came back to London, and that's when I started to go to majalis in London and learn from that, try to learn from that. But it's not just about learning information, it's about trying to place yourself at the time of that tragedy. And I think that's what, you can't really grasp it unless you're reliving it. And I guess that's what people are doing when they have majalis, and they're crying and they're recounting the details of the history, that it's reliving it so that we can kind of try to grasp it properly. Otherwise it just becomes like a historical kind of narrative. I was still extremely reclusive back then, so I didn't go to the procession that takes place on Ashura, in London. I didn't used to take really part in those things. But I remember a particular lecture that took place. I remember that again, this professor who I've mentioned came over he's from America and came over to lecture in London. And he was giving a series of all 10, throughout all the 10 nights. And again, I didn't attend all of them, but I thought, well, it's a shame to to miss them completely. So I'll go down there and I'll listen to him. And he gave this incredible lecture about the sort of, it sounds a bit pretentious to say, the cosmic dimension of Imam Hussein alayhi salam's sacrifice. You know, what it meant in terms of, you know, the whole construction of creation, what it meant in terms of the truth of creation, and, you know, the truth of the message that's come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, the significance of why he said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm pleased with your decree. And that was just, I mean, I've got that on a CD now, but for some reason, like listening to that, I was like, oh my God, I realized that the sacrifice of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is essential to Islam. It's like you can't have Islam without the message of Imam Hussein, without the sacrifice of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It had to happen. For, you know, on many different levels, and I'm not very good at explaining it in the way that he did, but the message of truth within that was necessary. It's not to say that what people did to him was what Allah would have desired, because we know that Allah permits things to happen that he's not pleased with. So he will give permission for things to happen that he's not pleased with, but at the same time it was a necessary sacrifice on the part of Imam Hussein alayhi salam for us to realise the truth of the message of Islam. And I realised, listening to that lecture, how essential it is to understand the message of Karbala. You can't really understand the proper message of Islam, Tawheed, if you don't understand the sacrifice of Imam Hussein. I think, again, going back to what I was saying about how number one, of course, it's the grandson of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his family. He was not going into battle, he was not going into war, he had virtually no army, and he wasn't out to conquer anybody or anything. He wasn't, you know, out to kind of expand an empire. So he was there to make a point. He was obliged to make a point. Because I remember someone making a comment online about how, well, you know, a lot more people died in Hiroshima, so why are you crying over this number of people who died on you know, the battlefield of Karbala? But the issue is not, it's not about numbers. As you say, it's about what the Imam stood for. And it's about, you know, the Imam's purity and his innocence, in a sense. His, you know, his sincerity of intention, and how he did this for our benefit. He had a unique role, and not only that, but like I said, it's a microcosm of human nature, of what is wrong with human nature, what is wrong with what's going on in the world today. It's the fact that these people had the audacity to violate something so sacred as well. So this is like a violation of something holy and sacred and beautiful, you know, divine, and they're just, you know, they're showing, in response to something beautiful and divine, they're responding to that with an animal-like nature, worse than animals. They're responding to it with a satanic nature. You know, they look at Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and everything was done to try to annihilate him and humiliate him, sully his name, or sully him, make him look like he's nothing, and finish him off and finish off the Ahlul Bayt and finish off Islam, you know, once and for all. And